fazer, eu quero fazer. Teca Teca. Um gajo vem pra mim outro dia. Ele disse assim. Um gajo vem pra mim outro dia. Ele disse assim.
I know you want to see me go home alone. I'm done waiting. I know you want to see me go home alone. I'm done waiting. And this hurts so bad I can't breathe on my own. Be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of...
Yo, yo, yo. We are back. Sorry, our Thursday show was postponed. Having problems with my internet service. They finally got me back on yesterday. So, hey, we back. It is January the 15th, and it is Martin Luther King's birthday. We don't want to do anything without saying happy birthday to Martin. He made lots of contributions to society, and unfortunately, on a certain scale, they were not recognized by those who he was trying to force to recognize and deal with us on a civilized manner, which kind of leads into what the show is going to be about today. Often our young people and older people are confronted with that question from some white person saying, how does slavery affect you now? And so I decided to do a two-part show to talk about that, to deal with that, to say, how does slavery affect us now? And I had to break it down into two parts because I wanted to do slavery, Jim Crow, and then civil rights up to today. So that's pretty much why it's broken down. Now, I'm not a history teacher. I'm not a teacher at all. I have no teaching certificates. But I have taken the steps to re-educate myself as a black person in America. Notice I didn't say African American. I'm not going to address myself as an African American until we start getting some real African American quality of life. I think part of the reason we haven't moved as much as we believe we have moved is because we keep accepting bull crap. And that's one of the reasons that we haven't been more successful. It's always up to us to have this moral quality and reach across the line and keep accepting the bull crap. Just like Donald Trump is about to be president, and everybody's up in arms that people are not going to be going to the inauguration. For what? There's about 12 Democrats. I think John Lewis just announced. And, you know, everybody's trying to browbeat these people like, oh, no, you shouldn't do this. You should reach across the lane, participate in the process. We've been trying to participate in this process for what? Well, we were given a chance. So for the last 150 years, we've been trying to participate in this process. And everywhere we turn, we are met with ignorance. We're supposed to accept the behavior of Donald Trump over the past 4 or 5 years of Barack Obama's presidency. And now we're supposed to say, hey, forget all that. You're not a racist. You did not incite the racism in America. No, you just brought it back up to from where it was. It's always been there. And I always said, ever since Barack got elected, I've experienced some of the most racist behavior on that undercover level for racism in America. It's more subtle, but it's more direct. And so that's why a lot of these white people won't get it, and they don't care to get it. Because they see a white man now standing in his power. It wasn't let's make America great again. It was let's make America white again. And that may not be all the white folks. Not gonna lump everybody in, but it was just enough to get this racist in office. So we're gonna start the show off. Well, before we get to that, Bishop Eddie Long passed away this morning. For people that care, he was the one involved in that rape suit with the 4 young men. We don't know if he did it or if he didn't do it. All we do know is that he passed away this morning, supposedly from aggressive cancer. And anytime anyone dies, we should say a prayer and God have mercy on their souls for whatever sins, because we're all going to have to pay for our own sins at some point in time. So we're going to get on with the show. If you want, you can take out a pencil and paper. Like I said, I'm not a teacher, but I'm going to try to teach you from my perspective of what needs to be addressed. I mean, if you have white friends and they want to be open for an open, honest discussion on what happened to blacks in America, then, you know, you can tell them some of this stuff. You can share it, and maybe this will give you an idea to go out and research and do some things yourself. The first clip I'm going to share with you, some of these clips may be 5 minutes long or 7 minutes long, but this is probably gonna be an hour-long show. And it's about what we went through in slavery and what this country did and the lies that were told to white folks as well as black folks to keep it to where we are now and where we have Donald Trump as president. My first clip here is called 40 Acres and a Lie. Let's look at that and then we'll discuss.
Conflict over black emancipation is as old as the nation. In 1861, the South left the Union rather than remain part of a country that restricted the expansion of slavery. At first, Abraham Lincoln saw the struggle as simply a war to save the nation. But in time, he would recast the Civil War as a war to end slavery. On January 1st, 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all slaves in the Confederate States. 6 months after the South surrendered, Congress ratified the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. The federal government had made a promise to the former slaves, these newly freed men and women who knew what they wanted: education and the right to vote, equal rights in the courts, and mostly, land.
What is it that your people need now that you're free? Our people need land, and they need tools to work the land. So there we began to see the priority to own our own land.
Every colored man will be a slave and feel himself a slave until he can raise his own bale of cotton and put his own mark upon it and says, "This is mine." Without independence and self-employment, freedom would be meaningless. Peter Hall.
On Edisto Island off the coast of South Carolina, thousands of newly freed blacks were making that dream come true. On land abandoned by their former masters and given to them by the Union Army, they had built schools and churches, established family and community life. But they had heard rumors that their future was at risk. Lincoln had been assassinated, and a Southerner, Andrew Johnson, was president. Johnson fought to save the Union, but not to free slaves. "This is a country for white men," he said, "and as long as I'm president, it will be a government for white men."
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
On October 19th, 1865, a boat carrying a deeply troubled Union general, Oliver O. Howard, slowly made its way toward Edisto. Howard was known as the Christian General, a deeply religious man who hated slavery. He was in charge of the new Freedmen's Bureau, established by Congress that year to protect the confiscated lands given to the former slaves. Howard was revered second only to Lincoln by free blacks.
They got the message from the Freedmen's Bureau that the general was coming back, General Oliver O. Howard, who they were expecting to hear nothing but good news from him because he was the man who had told them about how this land now was transferred to them and that they owned it and they didn't have to worry about massa no more and everything. He asked them to gather together at the church on Edisto. So over 2,000 people came from all amongst the oak trees and all back off in the woods and from their shacks and their dirt roads to meet there at the church to hear this new discussion about their land.
I have been sent by the president to tell you that your old masters have been pardoned and their plantations are to be given back to them, and that they would hire blacks to work for them. Lay aside your bitter feelings and be reconciled to them. General Oliver O. Howard.
So people were enraged and people started hollering out, "No, no, ain't no way. No, that ain't what you tell us before. No, sir, no, sir."
General Howard, why do you take away our lands? You take them from us who are true, always true to the government. You give them to our all-time enemies. The man who gave me 39 lashes and who stripped and flogged my mother and sister. Who keeps land from me well knowing I would not have anything to do with him if I had land of my own. That man I cannot well forgive. A freedman.
Like I say, that's called 40 Acres and a Lie. I put that clip together to show, because you're gonna get people coming to you and they're gonna swear up and down that slaves were given land. And that's true. But the lie comes in when you can stand up and say, yeah, but then they took it back. So they gave you land, gave you some type of opportunity, so you thought. Then it came right back around. Pardon all these Confederate soldiers were considered war criminals. They were fighting to preserve slavery in America. So they didn't deserve the land because you lost the war and your cause was lost. But your same government, Andrew Johnson, this ain't never going to be a land for niggas. This is land for free white men. And we going to fix that. And this still happens a lot today in certain situations where you think you're entitled to something, and maybe you are, but somebody's going to come along and correct that for you. So this happened throughout the South. This was just one county they were talking about, but throughout the South, all these landowners, these slaves, former slaves who had land now, the land was taken from them, given back to the same people that have been abusing blacks and slaves in America for the past 300 years. And then you were told, okay, you can go work for them, or you can go out and starve. So there was no reparations given to black people. You had to make that choice. Stay here and work this land and try to make it, because a lot of these people had families and they were struggling to keep the families together. Maybe a lot of the single individual younger slaves were like, fucking, I'm the hell out of here. I'm going to go and hit this road and try to make it up north and do whatever I can. But that was the big question. How are we going to live? So they take the land and everything back. That means they take everything back. Your little cabin that you thought you had, that you thought you was going to build something with, no, we taking that too. Or you can stay there and you can pay me a little rent. You can work the fields, but I'm going to rent them tools to you. I'm going to share, and we're going to take that out your pay. So how we going to live in this country? See, this country is based on this, that it's often, as long as you're trying to live under a certain system, no matter how oppressive it is, you don't have to deal with that system. You can change and go do whatever you want. You in America. We're not here to make it easy for you. So a lot of black folks did pack up and leave, and some went out west to Kansas, and some tried to make it up north, and some in southern states like Florida, and they tried to make it happen on their own, building their own little town, doing what they could do from their own knowledge. And this wasn't enough. White folks did not like that Negroes is getting a little bit out of hand. How do we keep control of the blacks? Because now we're dealing with a different type of Negro. This ain't the same Negro that we used to whoop and beat. How we going to keep them in line? Let me share something with you.
1 year later, in 1866, Congress, recognizing continued Southern resistance to black emancipation, passed the 14th and 15th Amendments, guaranteeing blacks the right to vote and due process of law. The time of Reconstruction had begun. But many whites did not plan on fulfilling the intentions of the new laws. Mississippi passed a black code giving courts the right to apprentice former slaves, with preference to their former owners.
The Negro is free whether we like it or not. For the purity and progress of both races, they must accept their place in the lower order of things. That place is the cotton fields of the South. Such is the rule of the plantation and the law of God. Governor Benjamin Humphreys.
But blacks did not see themselves trapped in the cotton fields. They used their vote to elect black representatives, sat on juries, and sent their children to school.
What had alarmed the white South during Reconstruction was not evidence of black failure, but evidence of black success, evidence of black assertion, evidence of black independence, evidence of black advancement, and evidence that black men were learning the uses of political power.
If intimidation would not keep blacks in their place, then violence might. In the same year that Reconstruction began, Nathan Bedford Forrest, a Confederate general, founded the Ku Klux Klan. The image of the Klan in white hoods killing blacks by the light of burning crosses would forever be etched in the American mind.
The way white supremacists made sure that ex-slaves would fall back into place or nearly back into place was terror. Beating people up, burning down their houses, shooting them, just the usual physical mayhem of personal violence.
Although they were beaten into submission and retreat, 1869 offered a glimmer of hope with the election of Civil War hero Ulysses S. Grant to the presidency, and Grant delivered. He sent federal troops to the South to counter groups like the Klan. But for the black community, even federal intervention was not enough.
The question of, should we stay at home in the South? Should we stay at home in the United States? Should we move somewhere else to the North? Should we move to the West? Or should we leave the United States entirely?
Blacks began to rise. More blacks were being educated. There was now a growing black middle class. And the children of the former slaves were not too quick to bow down to the white man as their parents had.
Whites perceived a new generation of black Southerners, the sons and the daughters and the grandsons and granddaughters of the former slaves, who had not been disciplined by slavery, who had never known slavery, who were perceived as much more restless and obviously much more threatening because, unlike some of their parents and grandparents, they seemed less afraid of whites.
We are not the Negro from whom the chains of slavery fell a quarter of a century ago. Most assuredly not. We are now qualified as being the equal of whites, and should be treated as such.
Every time we see a Negro physician, it does us good. When we see a Negro pharmacist, it goes still better. When we see the lawyers, professors, bank presidents, inventors, machinists, mechanics, we grin as much as our mouth will allow and shout, "The Negro is coming." Editor, Richmond Planet.
Many whites feared since the end of slavery that blacks would come to feel they were equal to whites. Now that fear seemed realized.
The colored race is getting more unreliable. Freedom has ruined them in every way. Only the old-timey darkies can be trusted. The young ones are sullen and grow more insolent every day.
They don't sing as they used to. You should have known the old days of the plantation. Every year it seems they're losing more and more of their own confessed good humor. I sometimes feel I don't know 'em anymore. I've grown so glum and serious, or I'm free to say I'm scared.
Blacks began.
It's kind of weird, right? We don't want y'all. We done took everything from you. Then beat you and everything. And you niggas are still trying to uplift yourselves in our country. Now, a lot of people got to realize there were a lot of illiterate white folks in the South back during this time. They took pride in keeping Negroes down. Extreme pride. That's the only thing they had for the most part. As long as we can keep a Negro down, we all good. So we've done everything we can to keep you down, and you're still having success. And we don't like that, because you starting to feel like you equal to us. Y'all doctors, lawyers. Okay, and don't be confused. They was doctors and lawyers for black people. They wasn't near hardly doing any too much work for white people, if any work for white people at all. So this was part of the thing that made it great. We were segregated away from them. So we had to depend on each other, and we got things done in a way that benefited us. But as soon as they saw it, I don't like the way these niggas acting. They getting a little too uppity. They used to sing and dance. They don't want to sing and dance no more. What's going on with these Negroes here? What else can we do? We didn't start the Ku Klux Klan. So now we're going to go around and terrorize them and kind of put them in their place. See, America was great at terrorism. They don't call it terrorism now. But that was one of the worst forms of terrorism on America, next to what they did to the Indians. So we can never forget what was done to the Indians. So we didn't gonna terrorize you. We can't get you to act right the way we want you to act. Why don't we just start doing a little Ku Klux Klan, little lynching? Any nigga get out of line, let's go ahead and whoop them. Let's go ahead and rape some black women. And all this goes on, and we look for some type of help from the police or anything like that, which really couldn't help you, because most of the police were part of the Ku Klux Klan. A lot of the legislation, part of the Ku Klux Klan. So, I mean, how's this affecting you, though? How's this affecting you? My people didn't have a fair chance to grow and develop what they needed, which affects the generation after that and the generation after that. We're not allowed to be a wealth. So while you got this 300-year head start of uninterrupted wealth building, we didn't get paid for slavery. So we started thinking, how can we get around these people? Because, see, in America, white people live. We were surviving. A lot of us are still surviving. It's a big difference in living and surviving. Living means you have full rights and equality to everything, and it's great. Surviving means whatever I got to do to make it. So we started looking toward the youth, or they started looking toward the youth. Educate to escape. If we educate ourselves a little more, or we start working with the kids, we can raise them up in such a manner where they won't have to go through what we go through. Let me share a video with you.
Sharecroppers.
Owners controlled their little worlds. So there was no police power, there was no federal power, there was no state power that actually made a difference on the ground. So you had relations of dependency built around obedience and submission. That was the ideology of the culture of slavery, obedience and submission.
Here was the black man, having very limited education, not knowing how to figure and to read, with the books being kept by the white man who is giving him his supplies to start a crop, and likewise owned the land. When the black man ended up at the end of the year and brought his crop in, the white man immediately arranged to outfigure him.
The man would take your cotton, and then the man at the store, you had credit, he run the books up on you, so you didn't have nothing. You work a whole year and hand pick 40 bales of cotton and come out with nothing.
Frustrated by the unfulfilled promise of emancipation, blacks turned to the next generation, to their children. They believed education would be the key to overcome white dominance. One man would come to symbolize this hope: Booker T. Washington. Born into slavery, Washington had managed to learn to read and write, and at 9 he worked in a salt mine. But within 25 years, Washington had been a student and a teacher at the Hampton Institute, and was invited to be principal of a new school in Alabama. That school was Tuskegee. These forced acts of humiliation began to manifest themselves on the Southern Railroad lines. Special Jim Crow cars were set aside on trains for black men and women, and for those white men who wanted to smoke and drink. In 1884, Ida B. Wells, a young teacher from Memphis, was quietly reading in a first-class car when the conductor ordered her to move to the Jim Crow car.
I refused, saying the forward car was a smoker and I was in the ladies' car. I proposed to stay. He tried to drag me out of my seat, but the moment he caught hold of my arm, I fastened my teeth on the back of his hand. Ida B. Wells.
They are able to get her out of the seat, but she refuses to go into that accommodation car. And she gets off the train, walks back to town with her dress torn, with her hat now askew. She will sue the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway. She takes this mighty corporation to court, and she does prevail in the end, because the judge does say that indeed she was a lady. She's a school teacher. She was dressed the way she was supposed to dress. She acted accordingly.
But the victory was short-lived. The verdict was overturned by a Tennessee appeals court.
I had firmly believed all along that the law was on our side and would give us justice. I feel shorn of that belief and utterly discouraged. If it were possible, I would gather the race in my arms and fly away with them. God, is there no redress, no peace, nor justice for us? Teach us what to do, for I am sorely, bitterly disgusted.
Disgusted. As so many of us are nowadays. She took him to court. She won. But just like in every other instance in America, nigga, you don't win. We win. If you ran a marathon and finished by 2 hours ahead of everybody else, or the white folks, they would come up and say, after we looked at the video, we noticed your shoes were untied. You're not a winner. Sorry. The trophy to the white man. Yes, you are the winner. This is type of nonsense that so many black people had to go through. It was designed to humiliate you, because how dare you have the nerve to stand up to a white person? How dare you believe that you're equal to a white person? There was a clip in there with Booker T. Washington, so I want to kind of run through some things real quick about Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington. Who else we got here? Langston Hughes. And what these men meant. Booker T was a great man. He had great ideas about independence and self-reliance. But he had one flaw. he believed that we should be under whites in society. We can still be separate. We can still do what we want to do. At Tuskegee, they had all these programs for black people to learn farming or learn pharmacy or learn a lot of great ideas. A lot of people wound up going to Tuskegee and other black universities to learn. Now, you can learn and you can do whatever, but don't ever consider yourself equal to white people. Stay in your place and we'll be great. And the white people, they loved him and they embraced him on this, and they said, this is a good nigga here. He completely understands what we saying. Don't get out of place, nigga. That's what we're saying. Booker T understands this. And for a while, he was able to convince a lot of black folks to go along with this and be prosperous over here. Don't go over here. I think he was even invited to the Cotton Convention. I'm not sure what year that was in, but the white people wanted him to give a speech. And as he went up on the stage, it was mostly white folks, of course. You know, they looking like, what this nigga about to say, and blah, blah, blah. And after he got through speaking and saying the Negro should stay in his place, all of a sudden the crowd loved him. And black folks looked at him as a total sellout, or at least a lot of them. One in particular was W.E.D. Du Bois. He didn't believe in that second-class citizenship. He was like, this some bullshit. So Du Bois, although he loved his brother Booker T, could not support that type of nonsense as a second-class citizen. See, there's a lot of stuff that you don't get in school and in the classroom. They just kind of skim over it, say this person was great, boom, and you're out of here. So Du Bois basically said, no, if we work hard and prove ourselves in this society, then we should be accepted under the law, as the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment says, that we have these rights, the same rights as white folks. So Du Bois wound up teaming up with the NAACP, and I think he was the editor of the Crisis newspaper. So he wanted to fight on a different plane, seeing more like what we would want. But at the same time, it was still, are we trying to prove ourselves to these white people? Which is a lot of what people get today. Are we fighting hard to fit in with these people that don't want us to fit in? That will only allow a certain amount of people to fit in? How does that affect us today? So we're trying to survive, so you teach your kids how to survive, and we got to work around white people to have something. So I learned to work around white people to have something because I picked it up from the people that raised me, and they picked it up from the people that raised them, that we got to work with these people and work around them. Don't disturb the process. They okay with us as long as we keep it low. But they don't really want us to integrate, so why are we trying to integrate when that's not what they really want? It's the mentality that it comes way back from those plantations and blacks trying to live, survive, and being under some constant pressure from white society to stay in your place. Now, when all this was still failing, these blacks are still getting a little too uppity Where's the rope? Where's the rope? I told a white person, if you can show me one incident of black people lynching white people in America, I'll let it go. There were over 4,000 lynchings in America. 504 of them are documented. Nobody ever went to jail for a lynching. I'm sure you'll run up and say, well, we found this case in 1980. Whatever. Tons and tons of lynchings in America yearly, done in a manner just to destroy a black man. Oh, you that uppity? You that far? You don't need me? Really? Get the rope.
Black people are beginning to feel the equals to white people.
White people became quite alarmed because if they were going to subjugate black people, they had to prove that no black person was capable of the things that these people were doing.
Blacks had attained a good deal of power in Wilmington in 1898. They were the majority of the population and of the voting population.
Many of the blacks at that time held elected positions and very prominent municipal positions. They were appointed by the Republicans. Most of the Republicans at that time were black.
Justices of the peace, aldermen, magistrates, firemen, public health workers, even though these might not appear to be very high prestige positions, at least they were examples to the black community and particularly to the youth of what black people could be.
Whites were fearful that the African Americans would begin to control the city of Wilmington since they were in the majority.
We have to look at two very basic issues. You have to look at politics and you have to look at economics. And whoever controls those two are in power. And it was all about power, about political power and economic power.
In the statewide and local elections of 1898, the Democratic Party, the party of white supremacy, was determined to end black political power in North Carolina.
It will be the meanest, vilest, dirtiest campaign since 1876. The slogan of the Democratic Party, from the mountains to the sea, will be but one word: nigger. Daniel Shank, Democrat.
They argue that only the Democrats can save North Carolina from what they call Negro rule.
Furnifold Simmons, who would go on to be a United States Senator, Charles Aycock, who would go on to be governor of North Carolina, and Josephus Daniels, who was editor of the Raleigh News and Observer. The three of them got together in a hotel and hatched a campaign that would talk about white women being endangered by black men holding office.
The white press portrayed blacks as monsters, representing them as an incubus, a mythical figure that raped women while they slept.
White women appeared in parades, on floats, in white dresses, holding up signs saying, "Protect us."
Deliberately fueling racial fires, a white newspaper published an inflammatory speech given by a leading Georgia feminist, Rebecca Felton.
If it requires lynching to protect woman's dearest possession from ravening, drunken human beasts, then I say lynch 1,000 Negroes a week, if it is necessary.
Manly's blood boils, and he dashes off his own editorial that conservative black people in Wilmington considered to be a truth unwisely said.
Our experience with poor white women in the country teaches us that the women of that race are not any more particular in the manner of clandestine meetings with colored men than white men with colored women. You leave your goods out of doors and then complain because they are taken away. Alex Manly.
The crowning thing that hit the white psychic nerve center was the very last sentence of the editorial, where he says, if white men continue to initiate sex with black women, sooner or later white women are going to start to do the very same thing with black men. And that was not the political thing to say. That just drove white men absolutely crazy.
A former Confederate officer, Alfred Waddell, called for violence.
We are resolved to change the conditions under which we live if we have to choke the Cape Fear River with carcasses.
White men appeared in rallies all over the state wearing red shirts, which was sort of a pre-fascist kind of outfit that they had borrowed from South Carolina.
White employers are threatening black employees who register to vote. So there's massive economic intimidation going on.
An organization of black women urged black men to vote or risk disgrace.
Every Negro who refuses to register this next Tuesday in order that he may vote, we shall make it our business to deal with him in a way that shall not be pleasant. He shall be branded as a white-livered coward who would sell his liberty.
Blacks meant to win by legal means, whites by any means.
We shall win tomorrow if we have to do it with guns. If we have not the votes to carry the election, we must carry it by force. If you find a Negro voting, tell him to leave the poll. If he refuses, kill him. Alfred Waddell.
Despite all the intimidation, many black voters were turning out and were voting. So the word goes out from Democratic headquarters that if we can't intimidate the black votes and get a majority that way, we will simply stuff the ballot boxes. And that's exactly what they do.
Every black candidate in North Carolina was defeated. But in Wilmington, the political victory did not satisfy white anger. A mob set Manly's newspaper on fire, and every black official was driven out of office.
They could not wait until it was time for the change of office to take place.
They decided to take control of everything.
It was basically a coup. They just took the offices away from the duly elected office holders.
So there are no longer any black officials in Wilmington city government.
The coup was followed by a massacre.
Firing began, and it seemed like a mighty battle in wartime. They went on firing, it seemed, at every living Negro, poured volleys into fleeing men like sportsmen firing at rabbits in an open field. The shrieks and screams of children, of mothers and wives, caused the blood of the most inhuman person to creep. Men lay on the street dead and dying, while members of their race walked by, unable to do them any good. Reverend Allen Kirk.
They went after business owners. They went after voters. They went after doctors and black lawyers. Those are the people they ran out of town because those are the people they saw as getting out of their place and therefore encouraging other black people to get out of their places.
Getting out of your place. Incredible, right? That's probably a story that you're not going to hear in your little history books in your history class. And let's get this understanding, because people get it confused. Maybe I'm confused. Do they teach this in white schools? Do they teach that white people were bad, did a lot of horrible shit, didn't pay for it, but never mind, we just letting you know this what happened, this how we got the country, and learn to live with it? No, that's not what's being taught. And the reason I want black people to re-educate themselves, so we'll have a good idea when people come to you with this nonsense of, oh yeah, there were black officials, why couldn't they get anything done? They were lawyers and this, why couldn't they get it done? Let's see. 1918, 1919, and 1920s, there were riots all across America. Chicago, Atlanta, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wilmington, Florida, Rosewood. All these places with nonsense like this. They rigged the election. One, put all the black folks out of office. Didn't want to wait, because why should we have to wait on niggas? Didn't want to wait. Then go in, take over the offices. No legal legislation or nothing, the armies or nothing. Nobody steps in to stop this. It's all legal. Nobody goes to jail. Lots of blacks injured and killed. How does this affect you? That's part of my heritage. You can't tell the Jews, well, that happened to your people, Hitler and blah, blah, blah. Forget about it. The Jews keep it in front all the time. We need to keep it in front all the time. Time out for all this nicety of, oh, well, we're just trying to get along and fuck that. Time out. Donald Trump is president. See how that story kind of mirrors what we got going now? And Donald Trump's the president. We want it legally. We're trying to reach out and help you. I'm really disgusted with all these entertainers that want to go and perform. Really, they need to stop it. It's nothing that this man can do or say to me. There's no interest. He can come to me and say, hey, I'll give you $1 million for this speech. And I say, you can take that $1 million and wipe your ass with it, Donald. Because there's nothing you can do for me. If you wanted me to believe in you, then we could have started that years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, where there were all types of opportunities to do stuff for black people, but you didn't. Instead, you had racial lawsuits up the yin yang for your discrimination, you and your father. So no, it's nothing you can do for me. Nothing a former slave owner can do for me. And this is the mindset that we have to start to develop, because it's BS. Now, Steve Harvey, he's like, well, Obama talked to me. He asked me to go. I would have told Obama, sorry, nope. Not going to participate in this BS. You know, it's all this money and all this. If the devil gives you any opportunity, realize you're dealing with the devil. And that opportunity you think you're getting, that's not what you're getting. My soul is not for purchase by this type of nonsense. But we don't want to get too far away from the story. So, all across America, we got all these riots breaking out. Now, it's not the black people that's rioting. We going along with you. We saying, okay, we gonna stay over here and do our thing. You know, we gonna go through the legal process here. Stay out your way. We gonna build it up. But just because the population was getting too big, we was getting too many educated blacks, and realized a lot of the southern whites were not as educated as a lot of the northern whites. So this looks really bad. These niggas is really getting beside themselves. Now, we didn't got the ropes. We ain't got the guns. The government has not stepped in to help nobody. Which is the amazing part. And still, yet we're able to progress here. But even if we make progress, it's slow progress. It's that progress that doesn't make a difference. Because if you're taking one step and we still get to take 10 steps, we moving. You still where we want you to be. Let me share a clip about all the different riots and nonsense. You know, everybody hears about Tulsa, but this was happening throughout, even in Chicago, where we're at now. Riots were breaking out.
Make way for democracy. We saved it in France, and by the great Jehovah, we will save it in the United States, or know the reasons why. This country of ours, despite all its better souls have done and dreamed, is yet a shameful land. It gloats in lynching, disfranchisement, caste, brutality, and insults. By the gods of heaven, we are cowards and jackasses if we do not now marshal every ounce of our brain and brawn to fight a sterner, more unbending battle against the forces of hell in our own land. We return. We return from fighting. We return fighting. W.E.B. Du Bois.
On Sunday, July 27, 1919, Eugene Williams, a 16-year-old black youth, crossed the invisible color line on a Chicago lakefront beach. Trying to swim away from attacking whites, he drowned, igniting racial fires. Roving bands of whites beat and killed unsuspecting blacks. Blacks fought back. At the riot's end, 15 whites and 23 blacks were dead. Jim Crow, said the Chicago Tribune, had come north. The Chicago riot had become part of the racial frenzy. Racial clashes, massacres, even lynchings in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas. In the early 1920s, Tulsa, Oklahoma, was home to one of the most prosperous African-American communities in the country. The Greenwood District was home to some of the greatest black entrepreneurs of the time. Their investments earned it the reputation as Black Wall Street. But the sight of increasing evidence of black competence and confidence was not what the white supremacists of Tulsa wanted to see. They stayed in the shadows like a coiled snake, waiting for the opportunity to strike. On the afternoon of May 31st, 1921, the Tulsa Tribune ran a front-page story entitled, "Nab Negro for Attacking Girl." The inference, in the language of the day, meant a black man had raped a white woman. Within hours, Tulsa, Oklahoma exploded into possibly the worst race riot in American history. That night, angry mobs of white men roamed the city, setting fires, going door to door, and killing blacks at random. There were reports of drive-by shootings, firebombings, and lynchings. By the next morning, Greenwood lay in ashes. Some 35 city blocks had been burned to the ground. "6,000 blacks had been rounded up by the mob, over 800 wounded. 300 African Americans lay dead. Not a single white was ever prosecuted. Throughout the week of September 17th, the press reported incidents of rape, almost all of which later proved to be false. By Saturday the 22nd, white tempers were at the boiling point.
The streets were swelling with people. Extras were flooding the street corners. Second assault, third assault. At one point, a man got up on a box and started delivering a speech. We've got to do something to protect our white women. Packs of white men and boys began rushing from the train stations, from the hotel lobbies, from the theaters to the spot. You have by now about 5,000 people. The cries of revenge, of anger, of white retaliation against blacks increase. A black messenger boy rides by on a bicycle. Someone knocks him down. He gets up and tries to defend himself. 10 people swarm in upon him and beat him senseless, leave him bleeding in the gutter. This only excites greater bloodlust. So the mob begins to spread out. Packs of 100, 200 begin marching up and down the alleyways, trying to find black men and women working in the shops, dragging them outside and beating them. Streetcars bringing black citizens into the city, mobs surround the car. If a black man or woman didn't fight back, he would be knocked down, kicked around, and then usually left alone. If he fought back, he was dead. This was downtown Atlanta. This was a few blocks from the police station. The state capitol was a few blocks up on the hill. The governor is up there.
In and no one was prosecuted. All this happening in America, land of the free, home of the brave, destroying black communities, killing black people, robbing. See, you got to understand, when they did these riots, they stole all the property afterward. In Tulsa, they didn't just go in and burn stuff down. They went in the house and took what they thought was of value, if there was money. All the stores and the banks and all that, they went in and they took that. Cut the phone lines down for 3 days so nobody can make a call out. People trying to run and find some way to safety. All these people killed, 35 blocks destroyed. Nobody's prosecuted. How does this affect you? It affects all the black people, because every time we try to do something, you guys stepped in and stopped us from doing it. And then you say, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. See, this how America works. We keep you from doing it. And the only reason we can keep you from doing it is because you keep fucking with us. You keep believing us. You keep believing in our American dream, that we really want to give you an opportunity. Make America white again. This was just part one. We're gonna pick it up on Thursday night with part two. We're gonna move into the civil rights era. We're gonna move into the redlining. Redlining was just a set of rules and regulations to further keep blacks down, to keep them from obtaining loans, having businesses, anything that they could do to subjugate you and keep you oppressed. And still, the more we try to integrate, it created a separation within our group also, because there were some blacks that were kind of making it because they was, hugging up to the white folks. And then there was the other group that really wasn't trying to hug up to the white folks. So we come into 55. The lynchings had kind of cut down a little bit. I think they said 1952 was the first year where there were no documented lynchings in America. Not say it didn't happen, but it just wasn't documented. And then we come to the beginning where we decide where we're gonna fight back here in 55 with Rosa Parks on the bus and Emmett Till being killed down in Money, Mississippi. So that's what we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up from the civil rights point. And like I said, we're going to break from everything every now and again just to do a little history synopsis. And hopefully anything I say, you can just go out there and you can research it yourself. This is the part of re-educating yourself. Don't sit around and accept, because the way we raise our kids now is in a so-called more integrated world, and we put them in with these kids, and then by the time they get 18, they're totally confused too. They're sitting around talking about how depressed they are and all this because they don't understand who they are. We've not given them the identity that we were given. We were warned against these people, but we don't warn our kids against these people anymore. We say trust these people. And then they wind up in the same condition that a lot of us are in. And even if you have to smile and get through it, like right now, Obama's smiling and getting through it. He is disgusted. Michelle Obama's a little more vocal. She's thoroughly disgusted. And I'm disgusted with any entertainer that goes to this inauguration. I'm going to be disgusted with you. I'm not going to buy your shit. I'm not going to support you. If the South Shore drill team goes, you will not ever get my support again on anything. And I will support that you never get back into the Bud Billiken parade. All these black colleges, if you close, too bad for you. Because we cannot afford to keep going on the same route and not getting anywhere. We're 150 years out of slavery. Why are we still talking about the same things of equality and jobs and opportunity for us under their system? If we got $1 trillion in spending wealth, why are we spending it with them? Why aren't we spending it with our own and embracing and growing our own? Oh, because every time we tried to do it, a riot broke out. The white people came in and killed us. The government didn't say anything. I keep forgetting that. Why? How's this stuff affecting you? You don't believe you can still do it? A white woman got on TV the other day and said, hey, if blacks are unsuccessful in America in the last 50 years, it's not our fault. It's y'all fault. Love, peace. So, we out of here.
Ele disse assim, é para você dançar. Ele disse assim, é para você dançar. Ele disse assim, mas eu disse para ele, por que você não dança? Quer eu quero te ver fazer. Eu quero te ver fazer. Teca Monique, Teca Monique, Teca, Teca Monique, deixa, Teca Monique, deixa, Teca Monique, Teca, Teca Monique, deixa, Teca Monique, deixa, Teca Monique, deixa. Anda lá dançar comigo. Anda lá dançar comigo. Teca Monique, Teca. Teca Monique, Teca. Ai, estás aqui outra vez pra me ver dançar. Meu corpo e teu corpo brincar com a música. Anda lá, Teca Monique. Teca Monique, Teca. Teca Monique, deixa. Teca Monique, deixa.